I take this as a great opportunity to welcome each one of you. It's wonderful to have you with us today for another insightful session in our Evolve 21 series. Evolve 21 is a digital series of sessions with thought leaders and industry experts from around the world to basically find answers to your biggest questions around digital transformation. When I throw the word retail, what hits you? I'm sure there will be multiple definitions. For me, of course, when I hear the word retail, I think of a seamless buying experience, either offline or online, an excellent customer service support, and last but not the least, a quick payment gateway, an experiential zone, no doubt, if I'm shopping offline, for me to test and then take a decision or then take an effective buying decision. And also an unbiased recommendation engine to make effective buying decisions online. This is how I look at the retail experience, and I call it the front end of retail. The back-end experience, which is equally important, that kind of is the charge behind the front-end experience, is of supply chain and logistics. And these two parts of the back-end experience also need to be uber efficient and data-driven for my front end of seamless retail experience to work efficiently. Hello, everyone. Who better could give us insights on how digital transformation is impacting the global retail industry than Ramashish Ray, who joins me at Evolve's Fireside Chat today. Welcome, Ramashish.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Thank you, Sheetal. It's wonderful, and I think the series is going to be really impactful. I'm very happy to be able to contribute.
Thank you, Ramashish. More about Ramashish, of course. Ramashish is a man who has donned many hats during his corporate journey. A seasoned business leader in the true sense, Ramashish has worked for some prestigious organizations such as Philips, Akzo Nobel Paints, Nokia, and Samsung. He truly seems to be a mobile man to me. He's credited with heralding the concept of branded retail in mobile shopping, having given birth to the idea of Nokia Priority Program in India and then scaling it up globally. This is besides the Samsung Digital Plazas and Samsung Smart Cafes that dot almost 700 plus towns and cities of India. He has years of rich and multifaceted experience as a global corporate CXO, during which he has worked across various verticals and proved to be an exemplary entrepreneur in the technology sector. Presently, Ramashish heads his own venture in Tartic, which adds another feather to his cap. Ramashish, I welcome you again.
Thank you so much, Sheetal. You've been really effusive with your words and praise. So hopefully I'm able to contribute to this forum and to all the esteemed guests as well as attendees who might come later. Let's hope this is a very engaging session. I really look forward to it.
Before we start the session and I start my conversation with Ramashish, I would like to inform all attendees that post the conversation with Ramashish, we will take up a quick Q&A from the audience. So if you wish to ask anything, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A section below. There is a Q&A section below. Please feel free to, again, I'm just repeating it here, to drop your questions anytime during the session, and we will take up your questions after the conversation with Ramashish. So moving on to our discussion today, this is going to be a conversational give and take between Ramashish and me. And to start with, Ramashish, I'm quite eager to know, according to you, what does digital transformation really mean for today's business leaders? And of course, as a guru of retail, I would focus this question plainly on the global retail market. What does digital transformation mean in the global retail market and for retail business leaders today?
I think that's a great way to start, Sheetal. Essentially, retail has been having quite a bit of pain in the last 2 years due to the pandemic, as we all know, especially offline branded retail.
Right.
But your point on digital transformation, it sounds a very big word. But organizations and leaders who have always focused on the best of customer experience and putting the customer first, which is something you mentioned already, always see retail as just the right way where the tire hits the road, right? So right from years back, we talk of barter being a form of retail, and then
Sure.
mom and pop fragmented, and it went down. But if you see the core of it all through, successful retailers, successful businesses who have maximized their throughput through retail have been those who have essentially catered to the right purchase behavior and build their processes around it. So to deliver the first, again, as I said, customer first. So a delightful experience, which you mentioned. Now, what has happened? Pre-pandemic, it had already started, and post-pandemic, I think it has just accelerated, which is that the mobile revolution, which you said, I've been party to it for quite some time. And in that sense, I got a ringside view of how the consumer or the purchasers, the shopper here, changed the way they were interacting with the brand or with the products, right? So the touch points changed. So I think the principles of, awareness, action, interest, most leaders understand this, but the way the shopper has been interacting has transformed essentially. So it's the shopper and their behavior which has digitally transformed. And businesses have essentially a need to be there to satisfy the way the shopper is behaving today and be ahead of the curve in some senses. So actually, when you mentioned experiences and offline, we know very much that soon, using the best of VR or AR technologies, we would be able to give best of experiences even at home, digitally, not necessarily only offline. So it's a very fast transforming space, and I think it's a very exciting space. It's also been brutal last 2 years, but I think those who put the customer first and therefore were digitally ready, I think they will definitely make the best of it. And that's where I think Alcor does a great job, and solutions of Alcor would be something people need to look at. Yeah.
Great. And to that point, Ramashish, just today I was reading that the Carrefour Group, the Majid Group, they are now looking at getting robots and have already rolled out certain robots in some of their stores in UAE. And I was just going through that bit. So it looks like even offline, we would see a lot of automation, robotics, AI, ML in the future. And like you rightly said, the pandemic has accelerated the whole digitization of the retail industry. I completely agree to that. And the touch points have changed. The millennial generation wants things fast. They want it at their mobile interface. Even if it is offline, they want it to be more experiential, because I guess we have far too many choices in front of us these days as compared to the earlier times. And to make an effective decision through these choices is where, like you rightly said, digital is key. Yeah. So we all agree that digital is key, meaning we need to digitize, but there are some very serious challenges, to digitize, to transform, and to take things ahead in the retail industry, so to say, or to that matter, any industry. So, what challenges do you see in digitizing and transforming? And the second part of my question to this is that if we are able to overcome these challenges, what are the value additions we see in the industry or for the business?
Yeah, I think let me focus on the first one because I've been through that journey in corporations when we were trying to do this. I think it depends also on sometimes the stage of an organization.
Right.
If it's because I'll use the word, there are 2 points to keep it simple. One is I'll not focus on the tools of digital, but I'll focus on one is the concept of legacy and the legacy systems. See, as organizations grow, obviously there are various ways of working, ways of processes, which has worked for them. And the problem is when you have to move very fast, sometimes that becomes your Achilles heel. And I've seen it, as I said, companies which couldn't change at the right time. It's very painful at times, but I think besides legacy, the other key thing which sometimes we tend to miss is people. I and you can sit and write out all the current processes and therefore customer first and what is the ideal processes again. But if we, and even maybe consider the legacy systems, but that's where leadership comes, that where they are able to see ahead and therefore leave behind the old and integrate those legacy systems. That's the easier part, I would say. But in a larger organization, to carry the people along, to carry the team along, because finally the change of processes have to be driven by them, even if we make the best of systems, right, for it to be effective. And we have seen that, therefore, why I said that it depends on the stage of the organization, because sometimes it is easier for someone who is digital first. And we are seeing it across industries, that digital first or companies which have just started operations, and mobile is very close to my heart. The brand which was there as a market leader a few years back was still toying with multiple channels and the pulls and pressures of that. Whereas a newbie brand became, let's say, the online first. And today they are number one. So within a span of 4-5 years. And I wouldn't say, of course, there are other things which needed to fall in place, the product quality, the supply chain, etc. But the boldness with which they went digital first, when maybe the market was just 15% of the market was online, and but they became the leader there. And because all the processes started from scratch, being digital first, today in a market which is 50% online, I'm talking about mobile and electronics, the brand, the number stacks have changed drastically, right? So I think coming back to it, it's people and this thing. And what's that, I think, value addition which leaders can do, which is your second point, is to be, I think it's talked about a lot, but I think first of all, leaders then need to think digital first themselves. Frankly, I mean, I would say I'm the older generation in that sense. But what I have, however, gained is that if you know the processes, if you put the customer first and you change fast enough,
Right.
you tend to benefit, and you don't need to do everything. But that's where, as a leader, to be able to articulate that vision of what digital first or a digitization would take, to take the team along, to iron out those people issues which will happen, because primarily it becomes sometimes just a change management issue.
Right.
It doesn't end up being the IT department's headache. If organizations start thinking of it, oh, digitization is something which the IT department does, it's the geeks, or it's then I think we set up ourselves for failure. because it's all encompassing. It is, you are talking about retail and digital, but at the end, as you said, it's retail. One is the first front end of it. But what about all the organization processes which are going to deliver that delightful experience? If they don't change internally across the organization, then I think we would be set up for failure.
I completely agree, Ramashish, to those two important points that you brought out. That one is the technology, and the second are the people. Now, we need, as leaders, we need to understand that with technology implementation, digitization, any platform of choice, it is imperative and very important that the leaders take the people along in this journey and are able to show them that end view, or the return on investment, so to say, after putting in those monies, the hours, and an important thing is changing people behavior to effectively use that new technology. So moving on, of course, we touched on what digital transformation is, why it needs to happen, some of the challenges, some of the value additions that come with it. Yet we all know that retail is extremely huge, tricky, big, sometimes very confusing. And with the changing consumer behavior, which also has innumerable touch points, you, me, the 50 attendees today, we all kind of may have different consumer behaviors. And here we are talking of billions and billions of people wanting to have a delightful experience. And when such a situation is in front of us, it kind of may be difficult to change quickly. Now, have you kind of encountered any such incident where you had to switch things based on data and statistics, which are important, no doubt, but you had to change that during your journey as a CXO or as a business head, but you could not manage that change last minute? Is there something in your personal experience which you could, give insight on, where you could change, you did change, but the change didn't go the right way?
Yeah, so you've touched on a very raw nerve, and I think I would be foolhardy to say that we don't have failures in this journey. Of course, there are larger failures of platform, like we went through when I was in the head office of Nokia, where we couldn't think of the right platform. But in retail, closer home, I think I did mention to you that while digital, we could see that online is going to become the numero uno channel. It is going to become the channel of choice for millennials. And if you want to, especially as a young, if I talk a technology brand, it has to appeal to the first movers who are usually millennials, right? But it was legacy which actually led to that failure. So some of the good parts were that we were able to take along in that experiment most of the organization to be behind us in terms of. But what happened was, as I said, the success of the current and what was working for us in the immediate margins, immediate revenues, then the change which had to be done and the investments which had to be done, it kind of took a backseat. And that 2 years, I would say, of delay cost the brand to be, in my opinion, much later. Though it had a much better, stronger brand, it was a much stronger product lineup, but it missed the bus. And I'm happy to share in detail over a coffee exact the pain points and statistics and this thing which I can't divulge on a call. But I think it's I would any day warn and take it as a, a friendly warning that as a leader, if you want to make a mark and you want to ensure that it works, you have to be able to, make the organization move in that direction. And I take part of the blame as a leader myself. Sometimes we have to be able to convince the rest of the organization, right? So it's very easy to sit outside and say that, others couldn't take the call. But I think these are choices which you would face in day to day when people think of those investments, and then they think, okay, why do I need to do it? It's anyway working well right now. But then there are plethora of cases. It's the same as choosing platforms, whether it was Nokia in its day, or someone not going on the online at the right time, not investing in the right CRM software at the right time, and then paying for it.
Right, right. I think it's nice of you to open up about some of the things that went south for you.
Yeah.
But rightly said, even when things go south, there are a multitude of learnings we get out of it. And maybe we all here and the esteemed audience are, better managers, better implementers from those learnings, and not making those mistakes or going south again. I think that is what is important. The ups and downs do happen.
Yeah.
And moving on to the ups and downs and the front end and back end, coming to the logistics part and the supply chain part, the forecasting part, let's go back which is equally important to the retail experience.
Yeah.
Ramashish, what do you think about the impact of digitization or transformation, disruption to transformation on supply chain and forecasting? Because that's an important gear that drives a retail experience.
Very, very important. I think those of in the audience, if you have retailers in there, most of them will agree that the assortment and merchandising strategy pretty much kind of is the core of a retail organization. And to have, one of the key KPIs is, if you take customer sat, is availability of the right assortment at the right place, right? And in that sense, I would put it this way, that most organizations who are truly retail, they work on a principle of looking at sell out and driving their backends, which essentially means all your systems look at what is selling out, the way it happens in online. I mean, today, why online is so successful is they are not stocking things to sell in, but they are looking at what's selling dynamically, what's moving out, what's the price points which are working, and then feeding that to the backend. So what I would urge most traditional product marketers, if they have not done it, is immediately tweak it. And it's very easy to say sell in to sell out, but start looking at channelizing your whole forecasting from sell out to your backend, whether it is factory, whether it is sourcing, all in all to the suppliers. And if you are able to do that, and I know some organizations have definitely in technology, in consumer electronics, etc., have done that transition. If they don't do that, it becomes that much harder, because they will have either they will have wrong price points or they'll stock out, which again leads to dissatisfaction, right? So get your merchandising engine digitized fast enough would be the motto there. Yes, and your assortment.
Right.
Yeah. We have some examples, brilliant examples. Everybody quotes, for example, Zara.
Yes.
Which did it years back, right? And we know the success they had because of that.
Right. Very important that supply chains, forecasting, data analytics and logistics and supply chain, are important when we digitize the complete retail experience. A quick one here, Ramashish, for you. If given a chance to start over again,
Yeah.
going back to your earlier days, how would you now plan your first step into transformation or digitization, automation? And will it be different when you calculate the risk now after so many years that have gone through? How would you calculate risk behind it? So, how would you start? What would your first step be? And how would you calculate risk?
Yeah, it's always great if one can get a plain white canvas, right? Without anything to tie us up. Doesn't happen usually in real life. But as an entrepreneur, I was able to do that because I could work on a blue canvas. And yes, we look at being digital first. But okay, let me give some cues to that. I think first and foremost, I always tend to believe in the base principles. So if I had to do, and if someone is starting from scratch, the best thing to do is put your shopper in the center of it. And I use the word shopper responsibly. I'm not using customer here because we're talking retail, and sometimes the customer may be the shopper and sometimes it may not be true, right? And they behave differently. It's like sometimes you buying a dress for somebody is very different from you buying a dress for yourself, and the journey can be different. So if you put the core shopper in the middle and then really map out, if you had that ability, and if you are starting from blue sky, start mapping out all the purchase journey which that shopper does. That it is, awareness indicators, all the possible awareness indicators, what would get them interested and driving that desire to do action. And then map out each of those processes, each of those influencers, build KPIs around it, because finally what you see is what you will end up getting. Focus, keep a extreme clear focus that in those processes you're always looking at not just there are many ways to look at it, right? Whether it is fast enough, efficient enough, cost enough. But I would go back to the simple principle that just keep, whenever you are caught up in that, just think, okay, is it right for the shopper, whatever I have to do, or am I doing something which is not right for the shopper? Because if you build the architecture in any other way, it would make it difficult to sustain it over the long run, right? So in this, then I would say just don't look internal. Once you have done that, start building all the ecosystem which is going to influence it all around. In fact, so because they are your co-creators. If you think that, okay, I have built my processes perfectly, but yeah, my supplier is out of it, I don't need to worry about it, or my vendor is out of it, the store staff is something that they will just follow. No, you build out those processes and you start looking at each one of their interactions and how can you digitize that as to so it may look humongous, but I think an exercise like that, if the organization drives through with the right professional expertise, before they jump into the tools, before they start putting solutions, before they pick up something from the shelf and say, okay, let's deploy this and we have become digital ready. It's not like that. But in real life, well, it's not always like that, because there are a lot of those processes. But yeah, and that's where change management comes in, because if you map out the tree of each one of those processes, you have an ideal goal. Don't give up that ideal goal, but what you do is you look at ways to achieve it with the current, and keep a time frame to it. Don't keep it too long, because the world is moving just too fast.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not going to give you that much of a leeway.
Any insights on how we can calculate risk? Let's say for a person, for a leader who would like to in a mid-sized company or a small retailer. Of course, I completely agree on the business plan part of thing, mapping various scenarios, kind of making that fishbone graph where, if this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do this. Kind of building it up inside you before you go in front of the shopper, as you said. What about the calculation of risks? Anything that you could tell our audience on that?
Yeah, so I think usually we look at the revenue and the bottom line and the impact, right? But I have always found that the biggest risk is people and the change which is required.
Okay. Interesting.
So what ends up happening is you start thinking, okay, if I tweak this, it will hit my margins for some time, or so and so channel will get affected. I'm talking about a real life scenario, right? You're shifting maybe one channel to online and you are thinking that what will be the impact. The googly or the missile usually comes from the fact that you didn't think about so and so partner who didn't want to be, or who was not digitally ready, or who was not wanting to be part of it, or that set of employees who didn't buy into that process. And that requires a huge amount of, I think, emotional intelligence, I would say. And along with that, in today's world, especially post-pandemic, a huge amount of empathy for leaders to look out for those signs. It's not been easy. And now, especially now post-pandemic, when you talk, everybody is like, yeah, many people people know that they have to, but the pace of change, everybody wants to change, but we have to appreciate that it is not the same and it's not easy for everyone. And in an organization, there are times when some are faster and some are slower. That doesn't mean the organization has to be slow. But if you know that and you map that as a risk, that okay, this part of the organization or this set of processes are slower than what we need to move, and then work out plan Bs and plan Cs around that.
Right, that would really help.
Yeah, so sometimes in a plan, we don't end up, don't take, change never happens. It's almost like an entrepreneur's journey. If you plan to go from A to B, it is never a straight line. You can take it for granted that you will hit enough.
And like you rightly said, people are the crux of it all.
Yeah.
Very good point. I think I'm going to shift gears now. Too much of mobile for me. So you have a lot of in-depth experience in the F&B industry too. Moving gears from mobile to F&B, we do know that leakage, pilferage in the F&B industry is very high. It can lead to a downfall of a company or of a brand. So how do you think digital here impacted, and how digital can be leveraged effectively to lower leakage and pilferage in the F&B industry?
Yeah. Actually, if you see my background in corporate, I have not worked so much in F&B, but I've been privileged post that, in my entrepreneurial journey, managing retail for various organizations. And that gave me an ability to, and opportunities to work across industries.
Right.
F&B is one of them, and you rightly point out, because digital came to the rescue of one of the, I would say, premier global retail chains who were battling this. I think more than pilferage, it's actually started that they wanted to see how to ensure that pilferage doesn't happen. And the reason is they were finding that a very small thing, it may seem to an organization, but on a store level, which is, pilferage of, say, coffee, or pilferage of this thing. But if you see the larger part of it, one is the, of course, the loss of coffee or sugar
Mm.
and that across say a few hundred stores. It's a lot. Worse is that impacting your shopper, your customers' brew experience, because at the end of the day, you want a certain amount. There is a very standardized aspect to that experience,
Mhm.
the coffee which you have. But the other thing, actually, what came out was while we were working on this, and I felt that, you know, taking the shopper and I would say in this case the consumer first kind of a position, that we
Mhm.
need to therefore stop pilferage. A very interesting thing again came out, that we employed technology which was existing, and essentially we used the camera network which they had, and worked out a way that things are hidden in the sense that we don't impinge on privacy, but
Mhm.
still be able to build a backend video analyzer by which we are able to tap the pilferage. More importantly, a side effect happened, very interestingly, that you asked, and this is going a little deep, but we started observing that we could enhance the customer experience by lowering their wait times. And
Okay.
sometimes you're in line, and the person doesn't know at the till that there are extra people because they are busy brewing something. And to be able to then map out digitally what's those max times, what's those down times, and
Mm.
then ensuring as a proactive measure just by analytics at the back end that this is how you need to change staffing, suddenly hiked up the productivity, because people didn't have to wait long. They were happier that they didn't have to wait long. You were able to therefore handle much more, many more customers in the same amount of time. So digital comes across in many ways.
Yes.
This is nothing classical. I mean, in the sense, people see that elephant in various ways, right? But
Mhm.
I love the fact always that technology has to be an enabler to finally giving a better experience. And if we keep, I keep coming back to that whether it was the days whether it is making better phones or better appliances, if we keep thinking that make it easier, use technology to deliver that experience better, make it easier, keep coming back to that core. And it is easy to say, everybody says it, but let's face it, when the crux comes to it, many of us take the shortcut, either because we let other pressures and pulls kind of
Forces. Yeah.
yes. And that's
Agreed.
why
Agreed.
we all look towards some of the brands and say, wow, I mean, look at Lego today. What a transformation. They are no more selling blocks.
No.
They have transformed in the way they sell. And today adults are buying Legos. I remember for us 20 years back, it was something you gave as a gift to a kid. No more. So,
Agreed.
yeah, there are.
Yeah. And I guess I like that analogy of the wait time that you brought in. Even that could be part of the digital transformation journey in retail, or when it comes to the food industry, typically, because as an end user, if I don't get my McDonald's burger, even if it is junk food, I kind of don't like that experience if it is delayed, because, and of course, when they also advertise that, they are supposed to kind of deliver their goods in a certain amount of time. But interesting to note that even the wait times uh, are a part of a transformation journey
Yeah.
for the F&B industry.
So Sheetal, if you see, we are all now used to online shopping. We don't like to wait. Uh, so so if you don't like to wait online, we want to quickly toggle. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to take that extra minute to get your payment," you mentioned that, right? So
Right.
why should it be different in offline? So that's what I keep saying, that let's not treat offline, online, omni. Yes, these are nice. Of course, we
They're
need.
different channels, no doubt.
Yes. it comes back to the principles remain the same. And if we keep focusing on, shopper experience, customer first, and then drive out all of that. If you just keep looking at that, whether it's offline, whether it's online, whether it is a combination of both, you will be digitally, you will maximize revenues and you will be kind of transformed.
Absolutely. You hit the nail. Coming to my next question, Ramashish, how do you leverage technology of today basically to pull out the power of many within the organization? How can we do that? How can various departments work together and do that in an organization? Basically, the power of many by using technology.
Yeah. I think this is there in some of the organizations, top level organizations, which have, you may know nowadays, we talk about the chief knowledge officer at times, or
Right.
so essentially what happened was we all, the internet allows us to work externally in terms of gathering knowledge or working across teams, right? I don't know how many mid-sized companies have thought of a very strong intranet. Larger organizations I know, which are already doing that, which ensures that. So, and that's where the chief knowledge officer comes in, where they ensure that learning across the organization, across different functions, different processes, are part of an intranet, which functions pretty much like the external internet. So you have the social media for internal employees. You have the chat sessions for internal employees. You have a library of sorts. You have your internal Google that you need to do something to reach out to, right? So I know that the larger organizations have kind of taken this seriously, but there is enough and more which can be done. And coming to that, I still remember one of the best successes we had. We always in offline retail, especially earlier, and even now, the warm body matters, right? At the end, the warm body, which is the person you interact with at the store. And how do you standardize that across formats, across countries, across cultures? And one of the best ways there is the power of, again, internet. So if someone, imagine one interaction which has happened in Brazil, which is excellent. And if you harness that well, where that learning goes immediately, dynamically to someone sitting in Indonesia, and they are able to internalize and use that. Again, you need digital for that, right? You need to have those processes where that learning is enabled. You need to envision that, because such nuggets, such excellent, I think, learning is there already in many organizations. But it's not, as you said, the power of one doesn't go to the power of many. And we look at many a time external solutions, whereas those are right in front of us, but we haven't set up those internal processes to be able to kind of harness that.
Right. Interesting. A lot of thought provocation here for me, at least, and I'm sure even the audience. I'm going to pull this question up a bit, a little further.
Yeah.
And maybe we talk about this over a cup of coffee in the physical space. But you rightly said that something that worked in Brazil could maybe used in Indonesia. Well, we will have to look at certain cultural aspects, certain behavioral patterns, certain very typical cultural behavioral patterns before shifting that one nugget from Brazil to Indonesia. Am I on the right track, or am I?
No, you're right. Yeah. So so what, there has to be obviously some filtration. I'm not talking about ever taking in a global setup one set of processes and just applying it blindfolded. But what I meant was that, suppose you see, let me put it in a very straightaway example. Imagine you run a retail chain globally, whatever category, and you come across a salesperson has done a delightful job. You've got a rating by a customer. They have given an exact experience of what has happened in store, and they are delighted by it. And across every organization, when you look at NPIs, you would have those 5 stars versus, or versus 3 stars, and some 1 stars, right? The whole game is, how do you set processes that those 5 stars behaviors are replicated across the organization more than those 1 stars. And the whole organization knows that what are those things which led to that 1 star, and don't repeat it. Therefore, it becomes a learning organization, right? It like we talk about AI being self-learning algorithms, right? But how do you use that with people, where you have that sharing in a I would say non-intrusive, or it's not about pointing out mistakes, but in a way that people are able to collaborate across countries, share those 5 star, share those nuggets, and then being able to apply that. And a lot of times we think that we need a central organization to drive that. I think today's the way internet, or the way the millennials interact across, they interact regardless of some. So the whole way, the culture of everything being driven by a center knowledge kind of a thing has dissipated, right?
I think that's changed.
You give the platform, you believe in the maturity, you right of the organization to learn, and you enable that. I think it's not that if the KPIs are right and you are putting the right, let's say, the motivations for them to drive to 5s. It's not that a salesperson or somebody wants to get up at the retail store and wants to attain a 1 that day, right? Nobody, I think, in there, except a very small, percentage, which might be doing that for various reasons. But then there are many 3s which could become 5s.
Right. Absolutely. Good point here. A quick reminder to the audience. We will be taking a quick Q&A after this conversation. So please feel free to put in your questions in the Q&A section below. I do see a couple of questions in already. If there are any more, please drop in your questions. Moving ahead, Ramashish, before we kind of come to the end of our conversation and move on to the Q&A, what is that one advice you would like to give to make digital core to driving value for companies? And of course, again, especially to retail.
Yeah, I don't think there are anyone today who believes that they don't have to have digital at their core. So I wouldn't dwell on that. What I would dwell on is one single point, which is don't be slow about it. I would actually, I think I talked about a warning thing, right? I have lived through one great company which went up on its highs and it actually went down because of the very fact that it didn't change in time. So it's very close and it's very personal. On the other hand, I would therefore tell everyone who listens to this, whether it's today or later, there is no time to delay. And I think everybody talks about that. Now, how do you go about it? Keep that principle in mind, that before you put the processes, ensure that you are putting the people first and the customer first. Once you do that and you design your process around it, you should be fine.
Great. I am now going to take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
So we have one of our participants would like you to share your thoughts on, in times to come, it will be phygital, that is physical and digital together, irrespective of the onset of digital, because the consumers will never get out of touch and feel euphoria at the point of purchase.
Agree.
What are your thoughts to one of our attendees' phygital way of doing business or shopping experience?
So I go back to the touch point, right? See, trends will come and go. Whether it is in one category, if you look at across categories today, some categories are at 50%, 60% only digital. Some categories are 30%. Some categories. So, for example, having a coffee is definitely a physical experience which you want to have, right? I don't fathom myself, even if I can pick up a coffee from the laptop tomorrow, because the experience can be great and all, but I'm not going to become a robot soon. So I think the point which I have been belaboring, and the reason I'm doing that is I would like to leave a few messages rather than a lot of it, which is just be very, sometimes in an organization we lose focus of how the shopper is actually behaving because we are so internal. Now you have to have your ears to the ground to know that how they are shopping, which percentage. So whether it is physical, digital, it is to the shopper, it doesn't matter. Look at the way we shop today. We may see something, and that's the process. Remember, we were talking about the fishbone and writing out those processes, because they may, which shopper is getting influence from TikTok versus YouTube versus, what they see on the street. Each is different. So you can't, of course, you can't map out each shopper, but you can actually map out all the processes in which they go. Now, what happens typically is we map out, we create processes, and we say, oh, we've become digital. The fact is, within 1 year, things have changed again, or maybe within 6 months. So this dynamism can only come if you are a learning organization with your ears to the ground. So I would say, don't worry about whether it's phygital today or it's omni was the buzzword or etc. Keep to the core that how is your shopper shopping today? How are they likely to, because you can't be catching behind the work. And that's where your research, your insights, shopper insights need to dive, that how are they going to shop with all the trends happening in the technology 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, 3 years down the line.
Right.
And start, you can't catch it from behind, right? You need to be ahead of the curve to be able to do that.
Very important point. Be ahead of the curve, be curious, be childlike, be pivot as quickly as possible. And of course, think from the shopper's side, mirror yourself most of the time from the shopper's way of thinking instead of being internal and maybe also emotional with your organizational processes and products, because you did bring out this important point that we cannot be emotional during our complete journey of delivering a retail experience, because many a times we need to be unbiased and think from the shopper's side of things. I think, Ramashish, I would just thank you for giving us your time today. The session today was extremely insightful. It was insightful to me, and I'm sure to our audience here. Let me check again if we have some more questions. We have the same person asking us on phygital. Is the digital transformation fundamentally changing how the business creates value? As in, does digital transformation change businesses' value creation, whether the values have changed, and do we lose customers in the nucleus view?
Nucleus view, okay. Can you repeat it a little bit? Or if the person who has questioned, if they can elaborate a little bit more, that'll help.
Yeah, that'll help us a bit. Does my understanding of this question is that can businesses create value, or do they need to change value fundamentally if they have to be digitally transformed.
Yeah.
Is there a value change, as in from the barter system or the non-digital system by going digital?
Yeah.
The nucleus view is something I've not understood too. So if you can elaborate on that, that will be great.
Okay, so so I kind of got confused between values of an organization versus what value you create. So I don't prescribe to the view that you will necessarily lose value. It comes back to if you whether it's online or physical, it's essentially a channel to the customer to ensure that they are able to shop. There are transitory phases, of course. I don't know where the person is located, but if they are located, I mean, in markets where online played a big price war, like in the early days, even in China, or if I see India, to gain market share, the online players tend to become very price aggressive, for example. Now, when they become very price aggressive, obviously, if you are playing in that channel, you tend to feel, oh, I'm going to lose a certain value there if I go there. And this comes back to that. Listen, that bogey is not going to go away. So in that sense that it is going to be there. Now, how do you balance both becomes a challenge for an organization, because it's about that transition phase. And that's where if depending on your position or how, if you are in leadership position, you have to be able to chart out that it is not that online, if it is making a loss or it's sustainable. Nothing is sustainable like that. But how do you drive value there by differentiating yourself? It's the same in retail. I mean, if in offline, for example, if certain product categories of yours becomes commoditized, you won't be able to get value out of it. So what do you do there? You look at your assortment. You understand, you do cross-selling, upselling, you see assortment strategy, you add value there to see that you are able to drive that. Again, principles remain the same. Some of the things are transitory because of the nature of the market.
Right.
And that does not mean that, one doesn't transform to digital. One still needs to and takes that at the bottom line.
Agreed. I thank you, Ramashish. Good session today.
Yep.
It was wonderful talking to you. Thanks for giving us your time today and joining me on this fireside chat. It was a complete pleasure hosting you, of course, and I'm sure our audience would have had a great time today as well. Ramashish, would you like to wrap up in a few words?
No, it was awesome, Sheetal, and pity that it's not over a real fireside at a cafe. And I look forward to that. But on the other hand, it's great that today, because I mean, look at Zoom. It was not something we were doing with pre-pandemic so much, but it allows us so many possibilities, and that's digital for you in another way. And the more we transform that way, I think that's the core of it. It's a pet topic of mine. I love retail, and therefore I was privileged. I'm really happy that we could have this engaging conversation.
Thank you, Ramashish. And to my esteemed audience, Ramashish is always available to chit chat and discuss with any one of you over a cup of coffee or even a Zoom conversation. Okay. So feel free to connect with us at Alcor or with me directly, and I can, get a meeting going, and you can always go and have a discussion with Ramashish on his valuable experience in retail. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us today for this great interactive session with Ramashish. Of course, at this point, I take leave. Both me and Ramashish take leave. But as you all would be aware, Evolve 21, our digital series continues. And I look forward to each one of you joining us on the next session on October 14th, where we would be discussing disruption to transformation in the financial services sector. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Ramashish.